Welcome to part 2 of our double episode with Hunter Buffington and Trevor Vaughn. If you haven't heard part 1, don't miss their discussion of what's distorting our agricultural system in the episode, The Echo Chamber Makes Us Stagnant. Now, in part 2, where local is the norm, we explore what it would take to bring sanity back to our food system and create sustainable, resilient communities along the way. Let's pick up where we left off. So you started our conversation with how you're connecting these voices. Will you tell this story? I'm a farmer now, right? And how do the incentives change so it becomes possible for me to find local customers, to grow what I want to grow, to not have my crops defoliated by Agent Orange's cousins, to be able to feed my family, to be able to take care of the land, to be able to handle manure properly? How does this look? Tell us a story, both of you, would you? How does it work?
And Trevor, I'm gonna turn this back to you in the conversation about the decisions your family's making about their land right now, because this is really integral. So most of the farmers that I work with, shockingly, are regenerative agriculture enthusiasts. They're really practicing this already. At the same time, I have a lot of farmers that come to me and they say, well, I want to do this. What is the cost, right? How long is it going to take? What are the risks that I'm taking? Remember, I said farmers are not risk averse, or they wouldn't be farmers. And it usually takes 3 years. The problem, and this is why I have such job security, is that the federal government does things like says climate smart grants. We're going to pay millions of dollars, right? We're going to emphasize disenfranchised BIPOC participation, right? The regulators say, okay, great. How do we sell carbon credits? We're going to measure carbon in the soil, and we're going to then use that to tell the farmers how much it's worth. Okay, so there's those. We'll just break it into those 3 camps. Problem is the federal government's not a farmer, right? So they say, we need you to start with the baseline and then show that you've added and you've made permanent these credits. Okay, so that's nice. And then the regulators say, okay, well, it's our job to enforce those measurements. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure organic carbon in the soil with a 24-inch core soil sample. I don't know about Texas, but it's almost impossible to get a 24-inch core soil sample in Colorado. And the COMET system, this is not anything that your listeners need to know, just that it's a software system designed by the USDA to incorporate this data, doesn't have hemp as a crop option. Hemp can't be the only one, right? Okay, so then the other thing they say is, do your farmers have a baseline? My regenerative practitioners have been doing this for decades, right? So they go, well, no. And so USDA says, well, you have to stop regenerative farming for 3 years to set a baseline, and then you can actually play in the carbon market.
You've got to be kidding me.
No, I really wish I was. And the worst part is that the regulators in the middle, they know, right? And the legislators at the top, who's talking to them? The people who won those climate smart grants are the big guys, BASF, right? The big
Cargill.
And even in some of those proposals, they acknowledged that they were going to pass the costs on to their customers even after they won this grant. So there's a huge problem in that paradigm shift. And then you have the farmers like Trevor's family who are thinking about that 7 generations forward, 7 generations back, they're managing the farm. But now they're having to make decisions. And with this kind of lock on opening these margins, it's incredibly challenging. So Trevor, and I think, Trevor, some of the conversations you've had with me about what are some of the other ways we can keep this land in the family and keep it farming.
We got to hear that from you now, Trevor.
Yeah.
Just for a moment, though, it's crazy listening to what you just said, Hunter, because Mim and I are publishing a book next summer called One Size Fits None. And it's all about what we're calling unresponsive systems. We've never mentioned the book on this podcast, but as I listen to you, I have this strange emotion that you and I talk about, Mim, or part of me is the writer who's like, oh my gosh, this is such a great case study for the book. We're right. Right? And then the other part of me is like, oh my goodness. I really,
so much worse than we thought.
Don't, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I'll make it clear, my mom and my aunt inherited this land from my grandfather, Deverell. Deverell inherited this land from his father and mother, and from there it starts with Monroe Brown Sawyer. And M.B. Sawyer was a Texas Ranger. He was a rancher, and he became a prolific grower. He had 13 kids and 13,000 acres. And he was able to buy this land for $1 an acre. He bought this land for $1 an acre because the United States was dead set on getting it sold, because it was the last pacified place in the United States. My Monroe Brown Sawyer was a Texas Ranger that drove out the last band of the Comanches, the most remote band of the Comanches, the Quahites, I believe was the name pronounced. And that band getting to Oklahoma opened up this area. And so I've been listening to Sacred Economics recently on Audible, and that, some people view land ownership as a crime. And you can really go back to crimes in terms of, like, look at a great fortune, and behind it is a great crime. I forgot who said that, but it is not me. But so, so here we are, fast forward to today, land rich, money poor, absentee landowners. My mom and my aunt, they don't know how to farm. Deverell, he didn't farm. He would play the game. He was a football coach. You know what I mean? He would invest a quarter into the seeds. He would invest a quarter into the cost of the inputs, whether fertilizer, herbicides, pesticides, whatever, and he'd get a quarter of what it made. And he played the game. My mom and my aunt didn't want to play the game. Money, it's not worth playing the game anymore because the game's gotten so bad. They're making a 3% ROI off of this money by doing a cash lease to these farmers. It's not enough. And so now my mom is having health issues. And so last month in May, my mom and my aunt sold 400 acres of this legacy land. And you get back to the question of who are we serving? I have been passionately going about trying to find ways to serve the farmer, to disrupt this industry in order to serve the microbiome. And I forgot to serve my family more. You know what I mean? Like, this is a two thing. A lot of these farmers that farm these thousands of acres, they might have 640 acres or 12 of old family land that they still farm, but a majority of the land that they farm is not theirs. It's somebody that lives in Dallas. And so, what do I envision? There is a 334 acre site, is one of the plots that my mom is open to me buying off of her, getting people involved to do regenerative ag that really care about proving a new model. She's open to bringing that in if she's able to sell it for better than what she's asking for. And I want to do that for her, because what I envision is that, John Kempf of Advancing Eco Agriculture, is and a lot of these small farmers that he's interviewed and stuff are proving out that you can make more on 2 acres of land that could be your backyard and your front yard. You can make more on that than farming 1,000 acres of cotton conventionally. And so that's 100x disruption. And so in order to go to the old model that has failed us, that has driven farmers to debt and to death, is the go big or go home model. That's the old Earl Butts. What was his name? Is that right? I'm getting that right, Hunter? The old,
yeah,
something like that. The old model of go big or go home. And there is a new model emerging here based off of old techniques and good old-fashioned manure composting and other new breakthrough, technologies that are kind of simple stuff like the paper pot planter, where all of a sudden you can plant, 200 head of lettuce in an hour and a half or 2 hours. I mean, so the profitability of these small farmers is on a whole other scale. So for me, I want to, look and say, what is this small but mighty, this resilient and profitable market gardening community look like? And could it exist as a living model in the
Yeah.
mouth of the lion of Monsanto?
Yeah.
And
What
so,
what
yeah.
what does it look like? That's where I want to get to. You're there. You've purchased that land from your mom and you're doing it. I have to say that the two of you have made these issues real in a way that I deeply appreciate. Going back 7 generations isn't just a line when you talk about the Comanche, right? Trevor, my grandfather grew up in El Paso and always said we were Yaqui, right? And so I feel that not as something in the history books, but you made me feel it like a reality. And then you're also taking us in this reality of thinking forward. What you talked about, Hunter, is what would it mean to create that system where the economics made sense for the farmer and it makes sense for not having to drive things thousands of miles. And what you said, Trevor, about doing it small, but actually being able to feed your family while nurturing the earth. Can you break down for us in the smallest little story how this could look if we could turn this world right side up?
Trevor, do you want me to start? I mean, I have an actual example. So,
Great.
and I am often quiet about my own indigenous background because it's not something that I want to be at the forefront of the conversations when we're having, when we're trying to broaden it. But it's been an incredible experience to reconnect with bands and smaller groups and then larger nations that are trying to understand how to harvest the potential of carbon, right? The potential of these systems, the opportunities for rural economic development. That's real on a lot of these tribal lands that are very isolated and generally not nice, right? They're moved from really nice farming lands to less well producing areas, right? But one of the amazing successes that really makes a circularity argument that is real is that in a reservation area, so we'll say 300 square miles, okay, just for comparison's sake, you have folks that are invested in the agriculture system who are planting and harvesting crops, right? From that planting and harvesting crops, then you are trying to address the food desert situation, which exists in many of these tribal areas. So that's the first thing, is that we need to make sure that they have their own water rights. You guys, it's crazy how much water flows right past them that they can't actually access. So the first thing is to make sure that not only do they have the land, which and I'm going to say something that maybe is controversial enough that it warrants its own conversation. But if we actually looked at the amount of stored carbon that's on tribal lands, it is a game changer for the nations. Massive opportunity there. But then if we say out of this 300 square miles, we take 30 miles, right? 30 square miles, and we turn that into agriculture land. Then we develop or we get rid of the food desert. We also drive processing jobs. Then there's food jobs coming from storage, right? Preparation of those foods. And then on top of that, you have the waste stream. So we start to look at what can come off of this waste stream. And you have things that should go right back into biochar production. So that helps the land. It's another carbon storage area, prevents things from going to the landfill. You can also begin to silage material for livestock production, right? Again, inserting the manure into the system, right? And then meat or animal byproducts for that tribal community. Milk is very common, goats, right? Then on top of that, you say, okay, what are the crops that we're producing? If we're going to do something that is like cotton or hemp, that has downstream product opportunities, then you just created an opportunity for at least raw ingredient manufacturing that can happen in one or two facilities in that 300 square miles. So then the farmers, the produce, right, is going that 100 miles, but then it goes right back to the stores, the manufacturing for that material. One fantastic example that I have is a tribal group that has been growing hemp, and they also do decortication right there on tribal lands. What they discovered was that
Wait, can you tell everyone what that is?
um, yeah, and I'm trying to look up the band name, but they historically are rug makers. So they were very interested in hemp as a fiber. So that's what their motivation was. Then they discovered that there was also, other opportunities for grain production in that system. So they grow for grain and fiber. Then they would take in that fiber, process it towards the rug making skills that they needed, and then they began to capture all of the dust that comes off the decortication machine. So they'd already started to develop this economy with the food supply and with the manufacturing. And then they took this waste dust and they realized that they could use it to uh, injection mold plastics right there to then make the traditional weaving tools that they need out of what is a bioplastic. So they could remove plastic from their system, which was incredibly culturally relevant for them, right? Like making everything internally was also made right there on the tribal lands. And so it helps to show kind of a completion of that circular system that also then embraces and commoditizes culture. It's unfortunate that I have to even say those words, but we're in a world now where if we don't commoditize culture, it literally has no value. And it just makes my skin crawl that I'm saying this, because one of the things that a paradigm change needs to happen. We don't pay farmers, we don't pay teachers. They're the foundation of our world. And so the value proposition is incredibly important. And that's what we're trying to really show. And they were able to make that happen all the way through. That's why it's one of my favorite examples. Because it was outside of the box. I mean, I'll share with you, a lot of folks are still trying to figure out at the big corporate production level how to make 3D filament, right, and injection molded plastics from hemp. And this band was able to do it right there with their own materials, right? It wasn't that difficult. So in my opinion, that's what happens when we really deploy 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. You learn from what you knew before. And if nobody told you you couldn't do it, right? Why would you not be able to? And then serving by maintaining, kind of that new plastic idea of those tools into what is a very traditional, culturally relevant and important to them material that they can then sell and commoditize to folks that want a piece of that or want to stop by and get a memento, right? As they're on their road trip that summer. I don't care. For me, if we're sharing culture and we're creating a value proposition because we want to know where it came from, that's wonderful. I think that's how we get there.
That was so beautiful. That was so beautifully said. Thank you.
And I'll share a link. I want to check with them and make sure that it's okay for me to do that before I go public with it. So it's a great story, but out of respect, I want to make sure that they know. And it's their story to tell. So it's appropriate for me to make sure that they're connected and ready to do that.
You'll be able to find that link, listeners, below the podcast when it's live. This is a great moment here because between Miriam Plavin-Masterman and Trevor Vaughn, it's the first time I've ever heard all three of us just quiet for a moment in a conversation. If nobody tells you you couldn't do it, you said, Hunter. Trevor, can we go back to you? And this may end up being a double episode, but we can't stop here. Trevor, what does the story look like for you on your few hundred acres? We just heard this incredible story from Hunter. Yeah. If nobody tells you you can't do it, what will you do?
Yeah. I mean, I see, like, tell you what, the hope of like what it would, in my mind, kind of look like or be like is that, you know, where people live, there are vibrant, beautiful gardens, and there are vibrant, beautiful orchards, and there are an incredibly biodiverse mix of annuals and perennials, of native species, and of high value land race developed fruits and vegetables and seeds and grains, and that those processing, that local market, I rode my bike to it, and I was able to put my 10 pounds of tomatoes right there in their hands, and it took me 4 minutes to bike there. That for me is the idea of real food sovereignty and resilience. That this thing of like, we have no need to sell 100 miles. That's a long way. We're making good money right here at the local market. Like, I don't have to drive to go get food. My food is in my backyard, and also some of the best food in the region is right here. I can walk to it.
Trevor, is that a possible world? I think a lot about.
I do.
Yeah, tell us. We're so far from it right now. Show us how it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, for me, so we'll get to kind of a materials potential for our land. Where we're at is where a majority of the Portland cement, the caliche, the calcium bicarbonate, that is one of the main ingredients for Portland cement, is sourced. This area is very rich. It's the subsoil. It's nature's cement. Good luck trying to get through it. But what you can do is you can take that material and you can make roads with it. You can make compressed earth building blocks with it. You can add biochar and hemp. I have photos of this, from my friend Steve Groon, that you can do that. I believe the Lower Sioux are starting to work with compressed earth blocks and hempcrete, and proving these potentials. But for me, it's like, hey, we got this caliche. Let's make hemp caliche earth blocks. Let's not turn this into Portland cement, which contributes to 7 to 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Let's make rainwater harvesting orchard walls that have thermal mass, that create shade, that we are able to build as beautiful demonstrations and create these beautiful, truffle inoculated nut trees on and stuff like that, and be like, hey, this farmer's making a good amount of money. I mean, off the truffles alone,
Right.
That
makes it sound more like a possible world if people are making good money.
Yeah, people are like, well, I mean, they still have guns in this part of Texas, but it's really just to defend the truffle orchards, For me, that you've got the ability to build, farms, walls, homes with compressed earth block caliche natural building systems. If there's solar panels sitting out there, gathering energy, guess what? Put a caliche gutter under it, and now you've got rainwater harvesting on a massive scale. That thing's coming off of a very awesome surface to collect rainwater. Also, we need to filter that rainwater to get the PFAS and to get the dicamba and to get the herbicides out of it. Well, what do? Well, you have biochar that you can use as a perfect natural filtration system for clean
Trevor,
water.
For people who don't know, you've already talked about dicamba. That's the Agent Orange cousin.
Yep.
PFAS, forever chemicals, break
Yep.
it down. And can you talk us through all those terms you just used? Biochar, give us a quickie on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the biochar is coming from the paralysis of the waste systems that are being grown, the cotton stalks or the corn stovers, and that is being, processed, right there locally, along with next to your cotton gin. That's also able to have a little mushroom growing facility.
And you could power your cotton gin off the heat from the pyrolysis.
That's right.
So I wanted to add that. Keep going.
Yep.
Go on, Trevor.
You're powering it from the organic Rankine cycle. That is going from that heat source. You have an invasive species of mesquite. Well, guess what? That mesquite has the same BTUs as coal. That's a lot of heat. That's a lot of power.
Yep.
So that the problem is the solution. We talk about what are the obstacles here. I've got Ganesh right out by my door, and I see Ganesh on my way. The presenter is also the removal of the obstacle. It is the problem in permaculture, as Bill Mollison says, the problem is the solution. So let's stop fighting this and let's really go into the solution space. So yes, and so that those locally sourced kind of ancient raw materials are now able to be repurposed in our 2.0 brains of how to make these systems better and work again. The Chinese were famous for putting outhouses along their Silk Road because they were like, please, shit here. Look, this is look how beautiful this outhouse is. Shit here. We need your shit.
This is no crazier than week back a few days ago at the Tesla 2024 shareholder meeting. We heard about an automaton that's your companion and can be at your house babysitting and teaching your kids. If that's a world that's being imagined right now, why not the one that you are imagining? What if instead this?
What if daycare was young kids going out into vineyards and gathering, blackberries with their mama, and a crew of mamas and brothers, and what if those mamas got, paid for that? Or how about this? How about childcare service was just free in this country? How about that?
Or we live with our family.
How about we live with our families? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I think there's 200 years ago in Texas was this very unique time. It was the dawning of the age of the impresario, which is a fancy word for entrepreneur. The Spanish didn't know how to, rein in Texas. They didn't have the name for Texas then. They didn't know.
Trevor, we gotta do workshops in the impresario's mindset. There's all this entrepreneur. We got it.
So I feel like time is a flat circle here, y'all. We're running a circular systems. Why not re-engage a new age of impresarioship? And I want to drive this home. Texas is the #1 state in the nation for losing farmland. We're losing it faster than anybody else to urban sprawl, to development. In the country, there are many crises. We're in the poly crisis here, but one of the main ones is we don't have enough housing. And the other one is, for farmers and the new farmers trying to get into this is access to land. Yeah. So what if we solve 2 birds, 1 stone? What if we were able to build beautiful LEED platinum homes and communities that were based off of, we aren't going to lose this land to urban sprawl. We're going to get more small farmers out to this land because they are the keystone species to heal the broken microbiome of what we've done during this green revolution. So, so that's my hope and prayer. Let's prove that model everywhere. But in West Texas, where we have land in the mouth of the lion of Monsanto, there are still unique potentials to show them something they ain't never seen before, and to give them something to talk about, and also to be like, I want to live there, So the age of extraction hopefully is dead and dying, but the age of attraction, let's get back to that. Yes. And I don't think we can create that new world with all of those bells and whistles of the circular system without a lot of creatives, a lot of people that really are coming from a heart-centered place and not an extractive consumption place. And we need to do that by getting back onto the land, and also, having our families be our neighbors again, and getting to have diverse areas. I would like those people that are running those 10 pounds of tomatoes on their bike 4-minute bike ride down to the shop. I want that to be a really diverse set of kids and moms. I want that to be Mescalero Apache kids and moms and the
Yes.
Quahog Comanches. I want that to be, black folks from the Houston area that have been, like I want, or migrants from Ghana, from Mexico, from Venezuela. Like we have a migrant crisis here, and we have a labor shortage here as well. What's going on? Why?
Connect dots, right? Just
Honestly,
connect dots.
I live in Brooklyn. I live in the city. I see kids I see small children selling candy and Skittles and bad processed sugar on the subway every day with their moms, and it's like these are the people that they created corn. These people, they created the tomato. It's like,
talk about the entrepreneurial mindset. I mean, if you've walked from Guatemala, you got more grit than anybody I know.
yeah.
That's what everything is.
And you came from a broken farming system, to get here, and you're a climate refugee. How can we, instead of having stiff upper lip, shitty homeowners associations, what if we had farm owners associations that were a part of really creating this new model? I'm sick of St. Augustine grass. I don't want to see it anymore. I want to see prickly pear. I want to see blackberries. I want to see, lettuce and tomatoes, and I want to see happy, healthy, kids and moms and communities.
Let's get back to the community.
Picking those things. I mean, America, people, John Vaughan, 10th Vaughan ago, Welshman, swam out into the harbor from Wales and was either going to drown or they picked him up, and thank God they picked him up. And so there were big reasons for people to leave where they came from, to come to this land. And it was the land that brought them here. They heard about thick prairie land, and it was the buffalo and the Native Americans that were doing controlled burns every 7 years. We just discovered these things. You're just like, we knew like that. We can biomimic this stuff. These solutions are here and they're being proven. So anyhow, where do we go next?
Hunter,
I just want to say, the thing that you said that you ended with is so poignant for me. And when I was filling out the questionnaire, I came at this just a couple days before, and I didn't have a lot of time to do research. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is such an amazing topic. Like, how do I whittle it down to one thing? But Trevor, you just said it. And that is that I really believe the solutions are already here. And I also believe that humans are in a place to not just be the problem, but to be the solution, to utilize this information. And I honestly think that we forgot how to utilize each other's knowledge, how to appreciate information or skill set. I'm not a farmer. I'm just going to throw it out there. I was going to show you my plant, but it's not right. I just know that I'm very dependent on other people to grow things. That's not my skill set. And
God bless the green thumbs. God bless the green thumbs.
Thank you, all of you out there. But if anybody wants to help my plants, I'll take it. But the point that I'm trying to make is, and I mentioned this before, in our value chain, like our system is really broken in what we put the most emphasis in the economic value. Teachers are getting paid the least, right? And yet they're responsible for an entire generation. When we think about healthcare, which in the United States, that's a whole other podcast, right? Because it's not really about healthcare, but we are putting our nurses and our other healthcare providers in an impossible situation. They don't have time to actually get to know their patients or to give them wellness care, right? And what we do is we are continuing to prioritize the symptoms. We don't sit next to strangers and have conversations anymore. We don't share food from other cultures in a way that's meaningful. And just that idea of isolating ourselves and only talking to people that think exactly like us, in my opinion, is why we've become stagnant. It's why we've allowed these systems to take over our world because that's all we know. And that's what our neighbor knows. And so that's what we talk about. And most people, Trevor, have never been anywhere where there is even a subway if they're farmers. I'm just going to put that out there. So bringing
Wait, then what do they take to get downtown? No, that's just a joke.
They're trucks, right? They're very
They're
large trucks.
They're big old trucks.
Yeah. And mind you, I grew up pushing cows in Wyoming, so I appreciate a good big truck. Let me just tell you. But that there's a huge disconnection between a rural experience and an urban experience. And what Trevor's talking about is an opportunity to bring that together, to really understand how sharing resources, skill sets can change the value proposition. No more is it going to be, I can't afford for someone else to watch my children. Instead, it's going to be, I give a day of my time to watch everyone's children. And then it's a collective bargaining chip. And that 4-mile bike ride, right? Think of all of the mental and health benefits that come from being on your bicycle, just changing how we experience the world and how we experience each other. I think.
Wait, so it's not healthy to cut that lawn that Trevor was talking about on a riding mower? Because I thought, sometimes it's like the size of the gut correlates with the size of the lawn. I mean, that's not good for you.
There's so many things that I could unpack there and make clips about, but I will say at least there's electric lawnmowers, and the only thing that makes that okay is if people plug them in during the day. So can I just make a shameless observation? Is that okay with you guys? So electric cars,
is in.
I'm sure that you would probably think that I would be a huge fan of electric cars, right? That would be the assumption. However, everybody plugs them in when? When do people plug in their electric cars?
Overnight.
So guess what they're doing? They're literally using the coal power plant down the street, and no one told them. I'm quite confident that if you went to the people who made an investment in an electric car and you told them that if they're plugging it in at night, they're literally supporting the coal industry, they would probably change when they plug it in.
Yeah.
Hunter Buffington, Trevor Vaughn, speak a truth here as we bring this to a close. Or tell us a lie.
Yeah. We were talking about,
well. Yeah.
we were playing in the mic check time with lyrics and stuff. And, in the end, the love you get is the love you give. And we've given a lot of love to our phones these days. And you're right, Hunter, we don't have conversations with strangers anymore. We don't open the possibility for a stranger to change our lives in a way, to have to walk a mile in their shoes, to break bread with them, to value, to value what they're saying, even if what they're saying is something you really disagree with, or something that you are opposed to. There have been a lot of beautiful kernels that have come out of this.
Yeah.
What if instead? And so the Stanislavski was a great Russian theater master. When I read his book when I was a young artist, the beauty of it is that it all starts with the magic. What if? And so, and that's, I think, what drew Hunter in to jump on this podcast with me in such short notice was, I desperately need to spend time with people that can really go into this magical framework and to help further manifest this change we want to be.
Amen. And again, if no one tells you can't.
Yes, we can. We can. I had people from places that I didn't even know about making a meal from each of their cultures here in the woods, New York State, just in April. And you know how you knew we were baking bread together? Because we started making fun of each other. And, my good friend Tomas Mora wanted to make tortilla española. And then Daria Najar, who is on an episode of this podcast, gave him such a hard time about eggs being for breakfast that he ended up switching dishes. And you might think, oh no, that was a total disrespect to his culture. But what's better than tortilla española? But in fact, we were getting down. We were learning to laugh with each other because we'd broken bread together. I want to say, Hunter Buffington and Trevor Vaughn, that you two broke my heart today, but you also stirred it with a sense of what's possible, which still belongs to us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for letting us have this conversation and taking us in directions that surprised me and also gave me some hope. Like, if these are the conversations that we're willing to have, then I still think we can change the world. We just have to figure out how to bring everybody with us. So, thanks.